30 seconds to go before the start of race number 1. France way out the back, Germany way out the back, Stevie. And this is where you better have your timing right.
Yeah, we can see the favoured position on the right-hand side of our screen. That's where should be the fastest angle to Mark 1, but Great Britain, Canada, New Zealand, they're well positioned. Australia, they're looking for a little bit of luck to find a gap here. It's about timing, it's about hitting the line. When the line goes white, and for France, for Germany, they're already out the back. Penalty for Germany, they're going to need to be behind the fleet when this start line clears, but USA at the bottom of the line. Canada in the middle, and it's all about getting on the foils now as the line turns white. Tight at the top, I'm not sure there's room for Switzerland in there. That was punchy from the Swiss crew. And at the bottom of the line, it's Diego Botín on the Spanish boat. The Canadians coming across the top, and New Zealand are up and foiling fast. It's a sprint now, but Diego Botín on that Spanish boat's going to be in good shape to mark 1.
Penalty Switzerland, you have been disqualified from the race for barging out the end.
Black flag penalty, they had no room there. Denmark had to give them room to avoid a massive collision. Huge error for the Swiss as Diego and crew lead this Spanish boat away in front of the home fans.
So at mark number 1, the fleet goes from 10 to 9.
Canada, relative GBR. That's an 11.
And Chief Umpire Craig Mitchell's not done, so Switzerland gets the black flag. Sebastian Schneider pushing the issue way too much, and their race 1 is done.
What a moment on board that Swiss boat. That happened early, Lisa. Got themselves trapped out. No room allowed at the start line. You can't barge in, and, well, probably a fair penalty.
It is a fair penalty, and then the reason it is so harsh is because when you are at that end of the line and you push in there is nowhere to go. So it's quite aggressive, and they were really close to Denmark, and it's actually, it's quite dangerous, and that's why the penalty's harsh. And we've got the live speeds here. It might only be 15 km/h winds, but we've got Spain going 57 km/h, so plenty of wind to send there and round this one.
And look at Spain coming up already to gate number 2. Peter Burling telling us before the start of race number 1 how tight this course was. So it's Spain, New Zealand, USA, Denmark, and Australia, the top 5.
Great rounding by the Spanish. New Zealand and the USA were going to be tight. We could see them going toe-to-toe. New Zealand has the right of way on the inside here. Late decision by Burling to split away. He will head back towards the Cadiz shoreline. He didn't want to go around the outside of Jimmy Spithill. The US boat just up and foiling. New flight controller Taylor Canfield on board the US boat. Pressure on him out there today. Thoughts are with Hans Henken recovering well after Toronto. We're glad to hear. But for the US, they've turned left. For the New Zealand crew, they've turned back towards that Cadiz shoreline. And I think you could find wind there, but it's perhaps a bit more of a risky call.
It is risky, but I think in general New Zealand have been really good at spotting these shifting winds, staying in the pressure and being quite bold and going out there. We spoke to Pete before, and he did say it is about staying in those paths. So I think he has seen something.
Nice manoeuvre there by the Spanish crew, and they're up and foiling. That'll be a good sign. They're heading back towards the fans on the Cadiz shoreline. Great view for the Spanish. What a first race in front of their home fans. And in the background, New Zealand had just turned in near the shore. Look pretty good for Spain at this point. They're out in front. And I think, again, on a day like today, in this lighter, shiftier wind, if you're out in front, you can make your own decisions. And that makes a massive difference versus being back in the pack and sailing in disturbed wind.
So as they make their way back up the course, let's go back to the start one more time. Let's break this down, and this is where the black flag comes in on Switzerland.
We can see Team Tilt. We're on the back of the Swiss boat as they're trying to squeeze inside that buoy, but they're not entitled to room. And you can see, had Rockwell Denmark not turned away, the Swiss would have wrapped themselves on the mark. Serious damage to the boat. They're just not allowed in there, Lisa.
And we have seen these black flags in the past. We've seen that France has had one before. I think the Spanish, when Phil Robertson was driving. It is, historically they do get penalised. And now back to the lives. New Zealand actually probably lost out a little bit on that. The thing to watch out for in the manoeuvres is we want teams to be maintaining around 30 km/h. So the Spanish on the top of our screen, it's still green. They should get a foiling manoeuvre here, but you really want to stay over 30 km/h for that foiling manoeuvre.
New Zealand passing behind Rockwell Denmark, the Americans sitting in second place, but it is Spain on home waters out in front on race number 1. Can they get back to the magic they had? Remember, they won in Los Angeles. They finished 3rd in Saint-Tropez, so the season's been good to the Spanish so far, and maybe this home event has come at the perfect time.
2, 1. Well, they're just a really, really good light wind team as well, Todd. I think we're starting to see that of this Spanish crew, and they're keeping things simple when they can. Interesting consequence of where you turn around gate 2 will affect gate 3. We can see, as Lisa said, probably a small loss for New Zealand, showing us 4th on our leader lines on the left there. but they're going to end up having to go back towards the Cadiz shoreline again at the top here, and I think you're putting your decision-making in the hands of Lady Luck. What will New Zealand do? The easy manoeuvre is to turn left, then they just sail straight, keep going, but you just can't be sure what wind there's going to be under the Cadiz shoreline in the top right of our screen.
I think we will see them turn left because they'll accelerate as they turn down, but we will see an early drive by then. You'll take the speed, you'll stay fast whilst you can.
Let's check in down on the water with Jenny Tulloch. Jenny, what are you seeing from your angle, and are you seeing any advantages on either side of the course right now that the teams are playing on?
Well, absolutely. I still think there's probably better breeze out here on the offshore side of this race course. There's that huge city wall blocking the breeze inside. So interesting to see the Kiwis going there twice. I thought they would early drive here as well, just like Lisa, and they're continuing in a bit further. So maybe what they think is a little bit more distance behind them. They can protect against the boats behind them, and what they want is a little extra oomph towards the boats in front.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you split downwind like this. I think the minimising manoeuvres is important, and the Kiwis are obviously comfortable over that side, and I think in general, if the Kiwis aren't in front, if they're down in fourth, they're happy to roll the dice and try and get some pressure.
Oh, and look at that true wind speed. So what wind have the teams got at the moment? Well, New Zealand have got 21 kilometres an hour versus just 16 for the USA. That should mean good news for New Zealand fans. They're in more wind. They should be going faster, and yep, there you go, 5 kilometres an hour faster nearly. They've overtaken the Danish. Why did Peter Burling head towards the shoreline? He clearly saw something that we couldn't from up here. Good decision making for New Zealand, and they're going to have the opportunity now to potentially find a split. They should be the boat with the left turn at the bottom. USA are going to be turning back right towards the shoreline. Is this another opportunity for New Zealand to gain?
So Peter Burling, fresh off their stand down in Taranto after the wing sail breakage in Saint-Tropez. They're back in the water, no rust on the Kiwis, showing great form here as they are moving into third and possibly overtaking the Americans now as they go to the favorite side of the course.
Well, they're going to favour side of the course, and when the boats meet each other, Todd, it will be New Zealand with the right of way. So if it is close in about 30 seconds time when the boats come back together, right of way will be with New Zealand. And look at the way they sail the boat, flying the boat so high here. The boat tilted right on top of them, has the effect of making the boat a little bit wider, gives you a little bit more horsepower, and just so efficient, but they're right on the edge to sail like that, Lisa.
They are right on the edge, but when they do sail like that, it does push them upwind quicker. So there's lots of nuances going on there, but they are sailing the boat really well in these light wind conditions, and they're always pushing. But to be honest, that was a pretty rough manoeuvre by them.
So it is Spain out in front. This is like 5 of 6. They'll get to the top of the course, and then it'll be the quick turn down to the finish line. Can Spain pull off a victory on the opening shot here on race number 1? We're scheduled for 2 more races. USA in second, Denmark in third. New Zealand's dropped back to fourth.
I think what's a real feature out here that's a little bit hard to see and very subtle, but there is actually quite a big sea state. We're right on the Atlantic coast here in Cadiz, and there's what we'd call a swell. There's a big rolling sea state, and that affects the foils. It's only the foils on these boats that are in the water, of course, but if they're getting swayed around and unsettled, it can make a big difference. And I think we saw New Zealand, they've done such a good job, but a bad manoeuvre in that sea state, they've lost a lot. And now look, coming up to this final turning mark, Spain, they've absolutely nailed their angle into Mark 5. Should be advantage to the Spanish here, set up well for a win. And now New Zealand, can they get an attack back on New Zealand? There's going to be 2 more manoeuvres for New Zealand, just 1 more for Denmark, and it could be good news for Rotterdam, Denmark.
And they are on the final leg, the hometown teams. It is Spain out in front with a huge lead here at the Spain Sail Grand Prix, day number 1. They will bring it into the shoreline just in front of their fans on the seawall and let the celebration begin as they open things up on their home event with a huge victory. Viva la España! Spain takes the win.
Vamos indeed, Diego. What a great start for the Spanish. And look at the fans on the shoreline there. And also, there you go, USA, Jimmy Spithill. He had a great, got to the final here last year. He's got form, and they'll be happy with the USA there. Good comeback. They're starting to find form season 4, and they need to.
So the Americans come across in second place with Jimmy Spithill at the wheel. It looks like Denmark, the most consistent team yesterday on practice day, because they finished 3 races in second across the board, showing that form again today. They will take a 3rd place. That's a great way to start things off. And then the Kiwis a little bit up and down, Lisa. They look like they could threaten for a win. Drop back with that 1 poor maneuver on that last leg where they'll finish in 4th place.
I I think what we're seeing is one maneuver can make a huge difference. So the pressure is really on for perfection, and what we were talking about with the sea state, with the unstable breeze, it really is a recipe for disaster if you don't get it right, and you'll fall off the foils, and it basically means you're going to lose so much distance.
19-second lead and win by Diego Botín and the Spanish over second place in Jimmy Spithill, as the three-time reigning and defending champion Australians come in 5th place. Tom Slims, he's not going to be happy with that, Stevie, but again, we're talking about points, and 5th place is better than 6th, which is better than 7th, so this might be their one bad race of the entire regatta.
Yeah, I think historically these are conditions that the Australians are perhaps, if there is a chink in their armour, it's maybe in these conditions. It's the only time you'd say they look perhaps vulnerable. But yeah, 5th is a counting result in this fleet. You can see at the moment, GBR, Canada and France, 7th, 8th, 9th. Well, they're some of our top form teams, and actually newcomers to the fleet. First time here in Cádiz, Germany. Eric Heil, great race. That was the voice of Stuart Biffle, the wing trimmer there, saying it is a great race. 6th place, they sailed the boat nicely. They sailed it smooth. And, you know, that's a good result. I think a lot of this is all about how can I keep the points. Tight at the top here. Canada on the inside. They have right of way. France dive inside Great Britain. This is going to be huge. So tight here. Wow, Ainsley having to keep clear. Contant de la Pierre dive for the overlap. Got inside. He did have right of way. He's kept clear, I think. Whoa, in the absolute blink of an eye, the situation changed so quickly. And now Canada and France. Who's first on the foils? Watch the top of the mast. Green on France, but again a turn towards the wind by Canada. Aggressive from Robertson, another match racing move. He takes one more punt towards the French. I think the French have stayed clear.
This is the umpire's penalty, France, relative GBR.
All that work for naught as France comes in 7th, but they now will be punted back behind Emirates, GBR, and Canada. So Canada will take 7th. GBR gets elevated to 8th. And unfortunately for Contant de la Pierre and the French, they will drop back to 9th. Wow.
Last minute dive inside by the French, and it's been deemed by the umpires he didn't give Great Britain enough time to keep clear. Tight moment. Right-hand side of our screen, that blue arrow, that suggests the fastest point to Mark 1. It should give you the shortest distance for the best time. It's tight in the fleet, it's tight at the top of the line for Switzerland again. They're struggling to have a gap in here. They're pushing that really hard once more. Australia and New Zealand are well positioned. Great Britain at the top of our screen. Have they got the timing right? How's your timing, Ben Ainsley, at the bottom of the line? Look for the line to turn white, and we'll be go for race 2. Wow, tight start. Germany don't make it in at the top of the line. Squeezed out by Switzerland. Disaster for the Germans there. And Contant de la Pierre, like a bullet out of a gun. What a start for the French. They're going to be leading us around Mark 1.
The French and Contant de la Pierre also in a big need of a big win, finishing 9th place in race number 1 after that late penalty. So here we are, mark number 1, it'll be France. And it looks like the Americans on the inside. Do they have the right of way as Australia comes around?
Oh, they're on the inside. They have the right of way. Australia must keep clear, but the judgment by Tom Slingsby to get around the Canadians there could have only been centimetres in it. First boat to turn away, New Zealand. They're hoping to find more wind away from the Cadiz shoreline, but Tom Slingsby on board Australia has done a nice job of getting round and up to second, and it's going to come down to good manoeuvres. New Zealand up and foiling again, but right now our ladder lines are showing France extending away. You're out in front on the French boat. Time to keep it simple, keep that boat fast, and they should be hoping to make up for a very disappointing race 1.
We have the live speeds here in kilometres per hour, miles per hour, and knots. The French team, they are the fastest around the boat, around the course, and they have been since Mark 1, sailing clear air and really commanding this race.
This is 6 legs. Remember, this is race number 2 of 3. One more race still to go. The French finishing in 9th on the last race. The Australians currently sitting in 2nd place. They finished in 5th on the last race. So a chance for them to pick up some big points. Remember, you've got to be in the top 3 after 5 races to get into the event final for only the top 3 boats. And the Americans, Stevie, I got to tell you what, right now, Taylor Canfield, Jimmy Spithill are doing a great job.
US team's doing a fantastic job. They're looking for that consistency that they just lack so far in season 4. They've often had quite a good day too, but they've not managed to start an event well. So great news for US fans, that's for sure there. We hear Jimmy Spittley saying, I'm struggling for speed. That's because he's sailing in the disturbed wind of the Australian boat. The Australian boat will be giving disturbed, turbulent wind, and you just can't go as fast when you're in the pack. Back in the pack this time, 5th for the Spanish team. How are they going to find a way to make up on that first place in race 1? Can they find a gap when you're in the pack, Lisa?
I think it was hard for the Spanish. They were in the right place in the start line, but they just were slow at the start, and the French team, they were the only boat that had speed on that line. So it's tough for them, but I think that they are really strong in these conditions, and that's what we're seeing throughout the season so far.
Well, if they're strong in these conditions, I got to ask you this: what is going on with Emirates GBR? They won the last 2 events. Here they are in 10th place right now, and they finished 8th, Stevie, on the first race. So they have dug themselves a massive hole.
Yeah, they've got a big problem. We see they're in the middle of our screen at the moment, off the foils, 10th place. I don't know if they've got some form of technical issues. Don't know what's going on. We'll have to find out. But yes, absolute disaster for them. 2 bad races in a row would be a problem.
From what we're hearing from the water, the British team have had technical issues throughout the morning with their wing screen, and that wing data provides so much information to them. So I'm not sure how much is working now, if it's got in their heads a little bit.
So back to racing action. This is race number 2. It is France out in front, Australia giving chase in second, with Spain now moving up to 3rd, the winners of race number 1. Stevie, if they can finish in the top 3 of the second race, that is huge for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, can you overtake boats when you're back in the pack here, as we see now a tight situation brewing between France and Australia. France are in front, but as they turn, they need to nail a foiling tack here. Can they stay in the air? No, they're coming. What a manoeuvre. Great work. Right of way with Australia, though. We could see a lead change here. There you go, De La Pierre. He turns the boat away, drops around behind the Australians. Advantage Australia, but how are they lined up for gate 3? Who's going to need to do more manoeuvres? If France are clear around gate 3, they'll be ahead. If not, it could be advantage Australia.
I think France is going to get around this gate without having to do another manoeuvre, so I think they're going to sneak. They're going to be slow because they're tight on lay line, but they will sneak ahead of Australia.
So the French out in front again, with Australia trying to close that gap, sitting in 2nd place. The Americans have moved back into 4th place. Good battle going there between 4th, 5th, and 6th. The Americans, the Kiwis, and the Spanish.
I think that was quite impressive decision-making by the French. We're on board with them there. We can see Contan, he looks pretty calm, but he knew the Australians were going to have the right of way, so he had to sail a little further than he planned and then execute a nice turn out behind Australia and still make it to the mark. So that was great tactical planning by the French boat, thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. But right now they've done a poor manoeuvre. Australia are back in it, and the Australians are chasing hard, as we can see. Right now, top of our screen, gate 3, US are going round. They've got the right of way. Spain dip behind United States. They dip behind Canada. But, oh no, Canada turns right in front of the Spanish. Aggressive from Phil Robertson. Look at this here. Spain are not allowed in there. Oh no, here we go. Oh, Phil Robertson, aggressive manoeuvre, shuts the door.
Penalty Spain relative Canada, not entitled to mark room.
Wow, that was aggressive from Canada and Phil Robertson. Was that payback for Saint-Tropez? There's no love lost between those 2 teams.
So Spain, both holes in the water, almost come to a complete stop as Phil Robertson basically said, this is my mark, I've got right away.
He did.
You get the scraps.
He absolutely said that. Aggressive manoeuvre. The trouble is, has he lost himself a couple of places? It's advantage New Zealand tactically here. Spanish will be behind them, but can't help thinking that's payback for Saint-Tropez.
We do see Phil Robertson and the Canadian team, they do sail quite aggressive. They're always pushing the rules. We saw it there, we saw it in Saint-Tropez, and we saw it in the last mark rounding in the previous race. So he does like those one-on-one battles, and in that one he came out on top.
He came out on top relative to the Spanish,
right,
but he came into that situation 4th, and he's now 6th.
I mean,
worth it.
It's not conservative sailing, really. You would take a 5th. You don't want to, like we saw in Saint-Tropez, you don't want to get in the battles if you're going to lose the war.
I think especially in these light conditions, we see France, Australia, they're sailing smooth round the course. The Australians struggling to catch this French boat, though. A 2-second gain on this downwind leg for the Australians is nice work. United States in the pack, but New Zealand, they have been in the pack. They've managed to sail fast and in space, and they're up to 4th. That would be good news for the New Zealand crew. Consistency is the key on a day like today, and trying to minimise mistakes is what you're looking for.
Let's go on board one more time. Look how close this is. Phil Robertson just pulls the right-hand turn right in front of the Spanish.
Yeah, I think the Spanish thought he was going straight on, and Phil just shut the door. He was entitled to shut the door. He's allowed that. He wasn't have any problem to turn in front there, and Spain can't go inside, but it all happened so late. Hard for Diego to keep clear, and aggressive stuff. And now we're back in the pack. New Zealand, do they cross ahead of Denmark? Rockwool Denmark were 9th early on in the race. They're up to 5th as well. So New Zealand and Denmark are moving impressively through the fleet, and it's going to be Spain, Canada again at the bottom.
Part two.
Could be advantage Spain back in this here. They've got their inside position. Canada must keep clear. Can Phil Robertson get around the outside? Yes, he can. Wow, this is the battle that keeps giving. All clear, all clear. Phil Robertson sets up for a manoeuvre on board Canada here, and he's going to try and smooth that Canadian boat down. The Spanish are off the foils. They're going to struggle to build speed from here.
So Phil Robertson makes a quick turn after getting around that gate, seeing his old friend Diego Bottin right behind him, and we've got congestion all over the course. Meanwhile, out in front, it is France has the lead of about 100 meters as they are approaching the final gate for them. Quentin Delapierre did a masterful job of getting out front and staying away from the chaos.
Here we go, France setting up to manoeuvre, but I think the French could well have 2 manoeuvres to do. Australia 1, that would be advantage Australia here. Could be very, very tight when we get to Mark 5. France will be on the inside, but Australia, we wouldn't be surprised to see them coming in pretty fast. This 100-meter lead could change in the next 10-15 seconds.
It's all going to be about if Australia nails this manoeuvre. Right now, I would say advantage France.
So France has that one mark. They'll make the left-hand turn. There you see the finish line in the distance as Australia comes in at full speed. Can they get up at foiling and get that maximum speed and just slingshot around the French? And oh, Lisa, this is going to be close. Can they keep both holes out of the water?
It is so high pressure. I think they have enough speed right now to pop all the foils, and they should be fairly safe here.
So race number 2, close quarter racing across the Atlantic from start to finish, just like race number 1. And in the end, it is Vive la France as Quentin Delapierre and the French get the victory in race number 2 here in Spain.
Well, they sailed that well, but it came from a fantastic start. As Lisa said, they hit the line fastest at the gun there. Australia, nice comeback for a 2nd place. Jimmy Spittle on board the USA, sitting in 3rd at the moment, looks well set for that consistency for the US team. They'll be happy, because France, remember, they were last in race 1. So there's not a lot of consistency for the French at the moment. They got that last-minute penalties. We've got a tight situation, 4th and 5th here. Kiwis have the right of way, but Denmark are going to be fast and possibly roll over the top. 3rd place for the United States, a good result. Here we go, here's the big moment. Rockwool Denmark, can they stay on the foils? They've got to keep clear of New Zealand. New Zealand expect them to turn Denmark up and try and push them off the foils. Great reactions by Sehested. He's kept the boat foiling, and I think Rockwool Denmark, they were last at Mark 1, and they could well find their way back here all the way up to 4th. What a result.
Drag race here, and Sehested just gets around Peter Burling and the Kiwis, so the Danes will pick up 4th place, and they shuffle the Kiwis back to 5th.
We're seeing so much aggressive racing. The course is really short, which means that the boats are coming head-to-head more often, and nobody is giving anyone an inch. And what we're about to see, if you see 6th and 7th, we've got Spain and Canada once again. Spain had that incident at the bottom rung and then managed to sneak in front of Canada. They must have found more pressure at that last leg.
Just silky smooth in these light winds on that Spanish boat, and there you go. Wow, that was a big moment we saw at gate 3. About 10 minutes ago, we saw an aggressive manoeuvre by Canada on the Spanish, but the Spanish have managed to get a 6th. They've dug out a good performance there. Phil Robertson back in 7th. He's not going to be happy, but look at that left-hand side of our screen. Well, there's a huge crowd of fans, which is great to see, but 10th place GBR. That is a worry for the British crew.
So Switzerland will come in 8th place, not the points they were looking for in race number 2 after being DQ'd in race number 1 with the black flag. It is France that gets the win. Germany will hold on, looks like, for 9th place. We will have to try to sort out what is going on with Emirates GBR, the winner of the last 2 races, as they finish in dead last. Here we go, 30 seconds before the start of the third and final fleet race today here at the Spain Sail Grand Prix in Cádiz. Stevie Morrison, where do you like to be right now?
Well, different lineup here. We can see a little bit more space at the bottom of our screen. France, New Zealand, they're foiling with 17 seconds to go. Canada, really well positioned and near the favoured pole position. So tight on board France. Wow, that was a close moment. He pushed it so tight. Bottom of the line, it's Canada and Denmark look well positioned. New Zealand are going to be out the back. Germany again coming in at the top, foiling fast. It's Australia out the middle of the line. It's Spain at the bottom of the line. They're up and foiling, and it's going to be a sprint. Spain versus Australia to lead at Mark 1.
The Spanish on the inside as they approach mark number 1. Tom Slingsby and the Australians out in front. Does he have the room and the distance? And with the French coming on strong.
He looks good on board Australia. They're going to lead around Mark 1. Content de la Pierre on board the French crew has done a nice job of finding a gap through the middle there, and they'll be happy with that, rounding in the top 3. Good position. Now, Australia, they're going to settle things down. We're on board. Let's watch this first manoeuvre on board the Australian boat as they look to set up for gate 2. This is how the fans are seeing it.
You talk about Stevie's famous quote, Lisa, how's your timing, how's your nerve? Because you had some people really holding their line there. The French, Content de la Pierre was not to be denied.
That was an amazing start. I think everyone is sailing so aggressively, and you know, I thought the French team were going to run straight into the Swiss in that moment. I was jumping out of my seat, so it looked like he had it under control just, but I think, you know, the Australians, they had a really nice speed at the start, but the Spanish, they had the better angle, but you know, Australia just crept over, and they should, with this race course, keep it simple and hold it from here, but Denmark really come back into this race.
Danish have, I think a few of the boats have sailed a bit of extra distance here, Lisa. They went past what we call the ley line, the point where you can make it to the gate with no more manoeuvres. French have sailed probably an extra 100, 150 metres more than the Germans, and even more than that versus Denmark, and they've dropped back from 3rd to 5th on board the French boat. Great rounding in 3rd place by the German crew. Can they keep it smooth? That's the voice. Here we go, it's tight there. Great Britain just inside Switzerland. The Swiss get round clean, and again now back in the pack. New Zealand, Great Britain again. How can they find some points? How can they salvage a decent mid-fleet result from here?
Well, we've seen this before with Australia starting off with a bad start and then just gradually clawing themselves back into it. Let's remind you that Australia started off with race number 1 in 5th place. They finished race number 2 in 2nd place, and here they are leading race number 3.
I think it's probably because I said this was their one weakness, Todd, isn't it? And that was motivation enough for Tom Slingsby and crew on board that Australian boat. But I think the simple thing is he's really sorted out his starting in these conditions, and once they're up and going, there's a lot of pressure on the flight controller. So Jason Waterhouse, flight control on board that Australian boat, you know, perhaps it could just be him. They often have less practice than the other teams, but he's doing a good job on that Australian boat. And as we do look at the start, we watch the French coming in. They've got to keep clear of the Swiss. Look how tight that is. Oh my word. I mean, that must have been centimetres in that. So aggressive from de la Pierre, but most importantly, he stayed on the foils. And well, that's why right now we can see the French in a decent position, but it's tricky out there on the course. Fastest boat right now is the Australians, but Denmark are moving through the fleet quickly.
A little bit more pace on to make it their life a bit harder.
So we just heard from Tom Slingsby there. He's trying to make the Spanish life harder. So he's giving up some distance towards the mark to try and give him dirty air and eventually give him more of a gap to the Spanish team. But, you know, very impressive by the Spanish fighting back. But if we look, we've got USA back down in 10th after having 2 good results. And New Zealand back in 9th. That's a surprise as well.
Well, we always say you can have one bad race, but a 10th or a 9th, that is a killer, Stevie. I mean, we're talking bad race 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe, but a 10th is, I'm not saying to doom you, but the Americans right now need it. And there you get the illustration of the dirty air that you were talking about with Tom Slingsby.
That's that turbulent air, and you can see that the Australians, he'd been planning to position himself here a long way out to throw that disturbed air on the Spanish. The Spanish have just about got themselves out and clear of the worst of it, but it's just advantage Australia. When you're heading upwind like this, you get to control the other boats a little bit easier, and it's a good job by the Australians. They're flying the boat nice and smooth here. It's a much smoother looking Australian boat than they were in race 1, but I think it's a lot easier to be smooth when you're out in front.
We've got the USA there.
Halfway point, and this is the final race of the day with Australia, the 3-time reigning and defending champions, out in front. Already looking ahead, they see the Americans sitting in 9th place as they head downwind.
This is going to be crucial, these next few minutes, for those boats in the pack. And when I talk about the pack, I'm talking about 5th all the way down to 10th. because it's going to come down to some really tight manoeuvres at the top here. Showing us 9th at the moment is New Zealand. They're off the bottom of our screen. Great Britain in 7th. They've got the right of way coming in here, and we can see there's only 50 metres or so between these 4, 5, 6 boats on our screen. How quickly can you get in and out of this gate is going to be so important. Switzerland, they've got to be confident they're clear ahead of the British if they want to carry straight on. Are they ahead? It's going to be tight. I think they're just clear out. Good judgment, Phil Robertson. This time he opts to keep it simple. No last-minute manoeuvre on board Canada this time. Good call. Keep it smooth. Great Britain keep it smooth as well. And it's so tight in the pack. It's going to really be crucial for New Zealand, for Great Britain, for France. All those teams that have had a bad result already today have got to salvage close to a 5th if they're going to have a hope of a good day tomorrow.
Emirates GBR has not had the best results thus far. They finished 8th in race number 1. They finished 10th in race number 2. And here they are battling for a top 4 position as they just get past the Swiss. It's Australia, Denmark, Spain, Switzerland, and Great Britain doing a battle for that 4th position.
Denmark are just sailing really nicely here, aren't they, Lisa? They're just slowly picking their way through the fleet.
They've made massive gains on this leg compared to the Spanish. The Spanish were right behind Australia, so they've really lost out here. I think that it's going to be neck and neck in this next leg between Denmark and Spain. But yeah, overall we're seeing the Danish team, they are sailing quite fast in general in SailGP, but I think the Spanish have that little edge in this lighter breeze.
And how much do you think, I mean, we heard from Jenny that in the practice before the racing, the Rockwell were just constantly putting the laps in. I mean, they're just doing the hard work.
Definitely, and I saw that in Toronto as well. They're really pushing every minute that they can in the water. They're absolutely taking, and you know, they have got something to prove. They've got the speed, but they're just making one colossal error in an event that's really costing them a win or a final, and it's whether they can just put it all together this weekend. But
we're on to the penultimate leg. Let's go down on the water and Jenny Tulloch. Jenny, yesterday the wind started dying off at the end of the day in practice. Does not look to be the case today. It looks like it's going to stay with us.
Yeah, at the moment it still looks beautiful, actually relatively even across the entire course, so it makes it a little bit easier for Australia looking in the rearview mirror at the boats behind them. But it's been so close for 4th to 9th. I think Rockwell and Spain in this little battle for 2nd and 3rd. And as you were saying, Lisa, Rockwell really putting in the time now. I think maybe as well, a little bit of the pressure of their home event in the last event in Toronto with their sponsors behind them is now behind them in the rearview mirror. So kind of pressure's off, and it's on Spain to perform instead.
And Spain right now sitting in 3rd place. That goes well with their 1st place on race number 1, 6th in race number 2. So a 3 would be a nice way to wrap up the day. Remember, everyone trying to get in the top 3 on points for that final event final, which comes after 2 more races tomorrow.
I think the day has actually changed slightly. It looks like that shore side is actually being more powerful in the last race compared to others. What we'll see is Rockwell, they'll build speed and then they'll go for their manoeuvre. If they get that foiling manoeuvre, they should be pretty safe here for a 2nd on the fleet. But yeah, very impressive race by that.
I think as the course goes on, Lisa, as well, what you start to see is by turning right and going towards that Cadiz shoreline, you've got the opportunity to get to Mark 5 with just 2 manoeuvres. None of the teams seem to be able to come out this way and do it in 1. If you can't do it in 1, you've got to do it in 3. And you said earlier, manoeuvres just kill you in these marginal conditions. So definitely that Cadiz side, there may be more wind, but what there definitely is, and what we want in sailing is some form of fact, is you can do less manoeuvres by heading towards Cadiz.
Race number 3 goes the way of the 3-time reigning and defending champion Australians. They take the victory here in Cadiz to close out Saturday. So Tom Slingsby with a great bounce-back victory in the 3rd and final race. Stevie, to your point, momentum is your friend, and they will certainly have it going into tomorrow. Denmark looking very smooth. They will come in 2nd place. A great day for the Danes. They finished in 3rd in race number 1, and of course they finished down the leaderboard just a little bit in 4th in race number 2. But this is a nice performance for them, finishing in 2nd.
And you know what, Todd? That 4th was their best race of the day, because they got to Mark 1 in 9th position, right at the back, and they worked their way all the way up to 4th, so they gained that 5 points through that race. That was without doubt their best race, and I think it is how well you can pick through the fleet, how well you can sail smooth when all around you is chaos, and they've done a really nice job. But yes, Australia, it's ominous for the rest of the fleet that they found some form in these marginal conditions.
A nice bounce back as well for Spain after a disappointing race 2 finish, where they finished 6th. They're going to come back with a 3rd, so a 1st, 6th, and a 3 for the hometown team as Diego Botín and his squad come across the line, and you can hear the crowd roaring on the wall. performance for Switzerland after being DQ'd in race number 1. They come back and they finish the day in 4th place overall. Canada's going to get 5th and Great Britain in 6th.
Yeah, the Canadian boat sailed a really smooth last lap. They kept it simple at the top of gate 3 and they managed to take 2 or 3 places in that. They're fast on board Canada. They've done a nice job there. Great Britain, that's a tough day. They've won the last 2 events, but I think they might have a problem getting to the final. And talking of getting to the final, France and New Zealand, it's going to be tough for both those teams from here. They've got work to do. It's a sprint to the finish. France must keep clear of New Zealand if it's tight, but I think the French are far enough ahead to keep out. That's a tough, tough race for the Kiwis. They've dropped back. They were up in around 4th or 5th in that one. And yeah, tough for those crews. When we see the points come up in the overalls, it's going to be interesting because USA, well, they were a form boat in the first 2 races, but a 10th, that's going to have brought them right back into the fight at this event.
Yeah, they go from a 2, a 3, and a 10. So 15 points now for the Americans. They were looking for something much more. Anything inside the top 6, Stevie, would have almost assuredly put them on great footing to go into that final. Only the top 3 on points get it done. And I don't know what it was at this start. It seemed like they were still in the mix, Stevie, and all of a sudden they just got caught up in everyone's wash and just dropped back.
Yeah, I think if you just can find yourself slightly out of position in that last 30 seconds, there's just no way back. You've not got the power to get on the foil, to get the speed, and then you're struggling.
Yeah, they were definitely slow at the start. They were kind of sitting back, didn't have a really good run up, so that really hurt them overall.
Well, we'll crunch all the numbers and see who sits where, but a great day of racing here in Spain. Under 30 seconds to go before the start of race number 4 here at the Spain Sail Grand Prix in Cádiz. Everyone getting into position and very light wind conditions.
Trying to keep your air clear now is important on board the US boat at the moment. We see at the top of the line a lot of space. Bottom of our screen, Great Britain. There should be a gap up there, but how's the acceleration going to be? New Zealand, Australia out the middle of the line. It's all about hitting this line when it goes white as fast as possible. Clear start there, great start by Canada, great start by New Zealand, and it's all about building speed now. All those boats slightly behind are going to struggle for less wind as Rockwell, big acceleration there. Here they go, it's now a sprint in towards Mark 1.
So a lot of the teams right now looking going H1. That's 1 hole out of the water like the Americans right there, Lisa. And I guess if you're on board, you're trying to find those gusts that Jenny talked about.
Yeah, this is really hard because it's spread out, it's light. We've only got 4 people on board, so it's about working the boat up. As soon as you've got 1 hull up, you reduce the drag, the boat can accelerate, and then it's about seizing the moment when you think you can pop on the foils.
So approaching mark number 1, Denmark has put themselves in a great position. The Americans are slotted in right behind them. The Kiwis on the inside. Who's going to get priority as they enter that yellow circle?
Everyone's quite fast behind.
Nice work by Rockwell to roll around the front there. They were fast on the outside, and of course a good race in race 4 here could cement Rockwell Denmark's place in the final already. The scores are tight going into this final day, and New Zealand, well, they need a good result. USA, they need a good result, and a top 3 position at Mark 1 is an excellent way of going about that. But can any boats get up and foiling? Bottom left-hand corner of our screen, Great Britain, they're up and foiling. Watch the Emirates GBR boat accelerate away. That's the magic that they need, and they're going to be fast now, working hard on the handles at the front of the boat. Hannah Diamond in on the front there. She's got that great grinding technique, and she's now moving away as the first 2 boats are foiling. And in the pack, wow, there's not going to be a lot of extra wind flying around. Hard to accelerate the boats if you're in that big group. New Zealand, Germany are all struggling as we see Rockwell Denmark. First manoeuvre completed. Can they get back up and foiling again?
And Lisa, with this wind, what's harder, getting the boat up and foiling or keeping it foiling?
Getting it up and foiling. So the speeds that we're looking for is around 28 kilometers per hour. So once they know that they're hitting those speeds, they've got that data on their wind screen, then they say, okay, we're fast enough, we can go for it. And again, it's about using your opportunities. So after you hit the manoeuvre, you think, okay, patience, we've hit the number, let's go. And you know, Denmark, they're doing 40 kilometers per hour.
Turning up in 5.
Great first downwind leg by Denmark. They did a brilliant job of getting the boat onto the foil again after the manoeuvre. And I think we're going to see a real playbook between the crews here today. Do you sail the extra distance trying to get on the foils, or do you just say, well, it's going to be hard to get on the foils and we'll minimise distance? Denmark have absolutely nailed both, but Great Britain, we saw, they were up and foiling, but they've sailed a lot of extra distance versus New Zealand. New Zealand have sailed probably nearly 300 metres less than Great Britain, a lot slower, but in that race to the final for New Zealand, where it looked pretty at the moment, if they can hang on to this second place with the US falling back, could be a last-minute dive for the final. But of course, we know Lisa Darmanin, she's going to have her head up in the Oracle cloud, staying on top of the results for us as the day goes on.
I guess the big disappointing thing is, you know, Spain has gone into today in third. They collected a few penalty points for their collision yesterday, so they've dropped out of the top three so far. So that battle on for third place is definitely on. But Great Britain, they had that excellent start, but it looks like it's going to be pretty hard for them to make this final.
While Denmark's able to go through gate number 2 foiling and pull way out in front, the rest of the fleet really struggling now, trying to find that win and trying to get the boats moving again. Very slow pace right now, different from what we saw yesterday, but as Jenny Tulloch reported, the breeze has dropped off precipitously this morning, and a tight rounding there between the Kiwis and Great Britain.
I think the interesting thing as well is the advantage in these boats and in this wind is if you can get yourself moving quickly, you make your own wind. So how were Denmark going at nearly 45 kilometres an hour down there when we can see the other boats struggling to make it? And that's just because if you're slow already, you're in less wind, you make less wind, and you can't get up on the foils. As we say, that magic number is you're looking for nearly 30 kilometres an hour of speed.
This is race committee. We are moving the windward gate, shortening the race to 0.3 nautical miles.
Now the race course is already quite small, and so the race course moves, it gets shorter and longer depending on the wind strength. So it's lucky we've got Mel Roberts out there being able to adapt. And the thing is, you know, Denmark is so far ahead right now, but I think if you get to Mark 1 first in these conditions, you have clear, and because they nailed that manoeuvre, that's really what got them the distance there.
So there you see the pace. The Americans currently sitting in 7th place. They were as high as 3rd early in this race, and a difficult downwind leg for them. So Stevie, they're going to need to pick up some points here because Spain had almost gift-wrapped that 3rd position to them. Now the Spanish are back in 6th, 1 spot ahead of the Americans.
It's really tight on the points, and its place is absolutely crucial. What Spain did a really good job of yesterday, and Denmark was making those overtakes here, as we see on the bottom left-hand side, the different speeds. Denmark out in front, no surprise to see them going faster. They're just sailing in clearer wind. It's easy to be quick. Don't expect there to be an awful lot of foil hike seen, especially on these upwind legs, Lisa.
Well, I mean, it is only around 30%, but compared to everybody else, that's a considerable amount. Obviously, we're used to seeing 90s in that, but, you know, in these conditions, it's actually more significant to get up on the foils, and we may see them have an attempt here.
So Denmark leads race number 4.
Hold trim, max trim.
Going for max trim here. We'll see if they can get the boat up. Looking for a little puff on the right-hand side.
I think the one thing to consider here is if you do try and force the boat up, you could lose more distance to where you want to go. So it's about weighing up whether you think you can do it or not. And if you get it wrong, you actually move back into the pack like the British team did.
Probably a good time to get out of here.
Constant communications across the fleet, as you see at the top of the board there, just 11.1 kilometers an hour, and that's spread across the entire course, Stevie. So this is really on the cusp of not even being able to fly or get up in the foiling position.
We can see Denmark, they headed in towards that Cadiz shoreline. They tried to get the boat foiling, and it didn't work for them. So they've now decided, okay, let's try and minimize the distance we sail. But I think the story we need to keep track of, United States, Spain, it's that battle for the final. New Zealand here, they've chosen to take a right turn away from the shore. We can see top of our screen, Denmark, they're wallowing somewhat. And now, these are the points. This is the all-important battle for the final. Denmark, well, they're in fantastic shape at the moment. Australia, again, both those boats rewarded for a good day one. But New Zealand, the second place here, and they've decided to do an extra turn at the top, but they found some nice wind, doing 15 kilometres an hour already away from the mark. And it's New Zealand at the moment. They'll be happiest with the start to day 2. It's not a lot of wind, but all the points are the same. Doesn't matter what the wind is. It's still about getting this boat round the course as quickly as possible.
I think you're right.
So much slower race than we saw yesterday. A lot of time to analyze the data. And to your point, Stevie, as Denmark went to the top of the screen and New Zealand went to the other, it looks like New Zealand's getting some great dividends, taking their medicine early with that extra maneuver. Still Denmark out in front by 100 meters here in race number 4. Remember, one more fleet race still to go, and then we are scheduled for the event final where only the top 3 teams will compete.
For the graphic on our bottom left here, this is Mark 1 versus now. We know that if you're out in front, it's easy to stay in front, but New Zealand and Australia, 4th and 7th now, 2nd and 6th, moving up a little bit through the fleet, and that's really key. In these light conditions, it is hard to move through the fleet. Often, you know, a top team, they can rely on their boat speed or good manoeuvres, whereas here, it's just about, oh, just on the top of our screen, we just missed it. Great Britain is foiling on the right-hand side, so it'll be interesting to see if they come back. Green on the top of the wing, that means they're up and foiling. Australia is going to move into that pressure.
So with these winds falling off, the race management has said that it will finish at the leeward gate, so we are down to the final leg here as Denmark should have enough, Stevie, to get to that victory and claim those points as they are on a maneuver right now. Emirates GBR struggling. They were as high as 3rd place, and now they sit in 3rd place still, being threatened now by the Australians who are moving up quickly.
I still worry about that area in the top of the screen. The wind's coming from the right of our screen down, and the problem Great Britain have is they did jump up on the foils, but now they're stuck in under that Cadiz shoreline, and I don't know how that's going to work out for them long term. Our ladder lines, well, it suggests at the moment that it's still tight for Great Britain with New Zealand, but Denmark well set for the finish to the left-hand side of the screen there. Still a couple of 100 metres to go for them. Could be a couple more manoeuvres to do, but they're definitely choosing to minimise the distance. And I think when you're not sure what's coming wind-wise, the one thing you can control is the distance you sail. If you can point towards the next gate, point where you want to go, that's normally a pretty good start to your decision-making process.
I think the Danish did a really good team. They took the mark that they wanted, but then when New Zealand was splitting the other way, they said, okay, let's just hedge it, let's just go the other way as New Zealand, cover them, and it's, you just got to stay between the next mark and the next boat, and they did a really good job of that.
Yeah, and we see here Great Britain, they're not the right-of-way boat. They've had to dip behind Spain. That could be good news for Spain in the battle for the final, though, as this one goes on. The points are changing all the time. There's going to be 2 more manoeuvres at least for United States and Spain. Australia and Great Britain are up to speed, but Denmark, they look good at the moment.
So there's the race to the final, and right now the Americans, as it stands, would get in there on 26 points on a tie, but the win in race number 4 goes the way of Denmark. Nikolaj Sæsted, in a very calculated race, gets it done in under 10 minutes, 9:47, and it's the clear start that got them out in front. Stevie, they fold momentarily. That's all they needed, and now we'll wait and see who comes in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, because that will play huge dividends towards what they can do and possibly get into the top 3.
It was a great start, and they just sailed clinically away. New Zealand have done a nice job of minimising distance. I think they should be able to drift across the line in 2nd place here, and it's the big news is Spain and the United States towards the top of our screen. How can they do? How can they get to the finish versus Canada, versus Australia, versus Great Britain, who will have the right of way, but the United States look pretty well lined up at the moment, and if they could sneak a 3rd, that'd be huge news for them.
I think what we saw there, we saw Great Britain. I was so excited that they were foiling, but because they went for it, they actually lost all that distance.
Great call to Job in the middle there, mate. Nice work, guys. Good comeback.
So all the teams creeping towards the finish as USA SailGP and their skipper Jimmy Spithill, they will claim 3rd, and that is important because Spain is behind them, and they need to pass them on points. So the Americans will take 3rd place, and it looks like Spain is going to come in 4th. And the Canadians right next to them. Imagine that.
Well, that was right. It was a tight moment there, but a brilliant comeback for Spain. We heard Paul Campbell-James saying good decision to take the crossing of the middle of the course. Made a nice gain on board the US there. Forced Great Britain and Australia to go behind them. And as to Lisa's comment, you know, that's a big loss for Great Britain. They were 3rd at the last gate, tried to foil. It looked glorious for a moment, but the glory only lasted so long, and they've dropped right back to 7th here, and it's a disappointing weekend for Great Britain. They're really at damage limitation season-wise now, I'd say. There's no chance of them making the final, and it's going to be a tight battle for that 3rd place, though. I'm pretty sure of that, because Nikolaj Sæsted wouldn't be too surprised if he's already guaranteed his place in the final for Rockwool, Denmark. But for everyone else, even Australia could now be back in the battle, be back in the fight for the place in the final, as we see Switzerland and France.
A little drama for 9th and 10th.
A lot of drama back there, Todd, but I think they're going to be really disappointed. Let's not forget, France 4th in season 3, and this tough start to season 4 for them is proving to continue right now.
France winning race number 2 yesterday. They finish in 9th place on race number 4 as the Swiss come across the line in 10th place. So the 4th race, the first race of Championship Sunday, is complete, and it's Denmark that claims the top spot. Everyone trying to get that key spot. Stevie's, we're under 30 seconds to go.
Really tricky position for the US at the top of the line here. Now Switzerland need to be starting out behind. They're in a tough position here. 17 seconds to go, and Switzerland are going to struggle here. They're not allowed in there. Might have to go over the line early. Denmark could shut the US out at the top of the line as well. Very tricky for the USA. Spain, can they find a gap? New Zealand are well positioned, but they're slow in the middle of the line. It's an acceleration battle now. Clear start, really good start. Australia well positioned, Denmark well positioned. Can New Zealand get that boat accelerated? If they do, then they will be on the inside coming into Mark 1, but it's all about boat speed and acceleration now, and Rockwool Denmark, they're doing it again. Hulls flying highest, and look at the speed on that Danish boat.
Yeah, close, we're not there yet, but we're close. This is Western. We're going to be leading anyway, so just take it, I guess.
And Rockwool Denmark has put themselves in a prime position for the 2nd race in a row. Race number 5 is off and heading towards mark number 1, with the Danes once again leading it.
Denmark and Australia, this is exactly what they need, and for New Zealand it's a pretty picture at the moment. Wallowing in the background is the hometown heroes, Spain. USA, left-hand side of our screen, they're out the back as well. We should see Denmark lead away. We do, and they're up and foiling on board Rockwool Denmark. The Australians coming round in 2nd, but most importantly in our race to the final, it's New Zealand in that big battle that get round in 3rd, just ahead of Canada. Can they hang on and stay ahead of that US boat?
Okay.
Wow, I've got to wonder though, Stevie, if Switzerland had not pulled off and maybe relinquished that penalty earlier instead of trying to go forward, if the Americans had a better run at it.
Well, the US certainly found themselves in a tight battle, but that's the game. There's 10 boats on the fleet. You can only control your world. The US were in a pretty risky position to start with, and as we can see at the moment, 2 points behind New Zealand. However, as our screen shows us, top of the screen, New Zealand dropping back to 4th, United States 5th, and the next decision by those 2 boats could define the race.
I think right now with USA and New Zealand, it's who beats who. So the job for New Zealand right now is not to try and win the race, but to stay in front of USA.
It's tight though. There's a lot of congestion in that pack. Look at the advantage you get when you're out in front. Now, don't get me wrong, Denmark are doing a fantastic job, but the reason they're that far ahead is they're sailing in clear wind. They're able to sail their angles. They're not thinking about boat-on-boat battles. And at gate 2, nearly 200 meters ahead, and that's going to probably be somewhere near 45 seconds advantage. Brilliant from Sir Hested and his crew, and he shouldn't need to do much maths if he can keep the boat going smoothly here.
Yeah, maybe. Let's just say happy when you're there for the minute to go.
I mean, I know we're not at the final yet, but the thing is, this gives them a lot of confidence.
Right.
They've had really good starts, and they're executing that first foiling pop. So I think for everybody else, seeing Denmark that far out in front, you know, it's fantastic to see. They've been so fast all season, and they've made errors, but they've nailed it so far.
And what do you? I've always think that going into these final, momentum's the key, and it's really interesting. Denmark 2 in a row. They just look on it.
I mean, Australia has also looked quite good today, but the boat that they need to beat is the one that's, you know, hundreds of meters out in front. So I think knowing that you can execute is key.
So those are the qualifying teams as it stands right now. It would be Denmark and Australia in, and New Zealand would get the 3rd and final position. So if you're cheering for Team USA, you're hoping that they can get past Canada and possibly move up by New Zealand to get those points back. But as it stands now, the Kiwis would be the 3rd and final boat into the event final, which is coming up shortly.
USA pushed themselves too wide on the course. They're left-hand side of our screen there, and they've dropped right back. They will set themselves up, I imagine, for a right turn, but New Zealand, it looks pretty good for them at the moment. They're going to follow round in 3rd just, but there's no foiling going on out here, really. Denmark gave us a brief glimmer of foiling, but it's really not the day for that. It's the day for sensible decision-making and keeping the boat gliding along. Canada have done a nice job. New Zealand, they're going to go left. Jimmy Spithill, well, he's going to roll the dice. I anticipate a right turn for USA, and who's going to find more wind could be in the lap of the gods after this gate 2.
I think in this light wind as well, it is obviously you need to go fast, but it's about sailing less distance, and that's why New Zealand were able to leg out on USA there.
Just a quick ease.
So the Americans are going to take that right-hand turn, and they're going to follow Canada around and hopefully find some kind of breeze coming off that city seawall here in Cádiz, because they need some magic and they need some wind in a big-time way.
Okay, my wheel. Just trying to hold my line, my wing. Let go.
Go Jimmy Spittle, they're just trying to sail the boat as close to the wind as possible because they have followed the Canadians round here, and if you're following someone, you're in their turbulent, disturbed wind, you can't go as fast. So for USA now, it's all about absolute silky smooth. Will they find more wind? It looks pretty good on board Canada at the moment, showing 20 kilometers an hour, just 8 on board the Kiwi boat. Faster you go, the better you go, and at the moment it's USA sitting in third, and they're showing us in the final ahead of New Zealand. But we know that it should just be a case of who beats who with New Zealand and the United States.
So that is the battle. Meanwhile, way out in front, having no issues whatsoever, traveling at 22 kilometers an hour and flying one hole. That is Rockwell, Denmark. They won the first race of today. They came off a strong performance yesterday. Lisa, this goes all the way back to Friday during training, where they were consistent across the board, top 3 in every race.
Yeah, the Danish team, they've looked super strong in these light conditions. We've got the 24-metre all-purpose wing. They seem quite comfortable in these conditions with this configuration. We're hoping that we're going to have the 29-metre wing back as the design team make a few more tweaks to mitigate any risk of reoccurrence of an issue. So fingers crossed we've got that back. But the Danish team, they love this configuration.
How big of a difference, Stevie, would it make if the 29-metre wings were out there right now?
I think you'd see them happily getting up onto hull 1. It is compromised with everything. There's a lot more horsepower, but there's a bit more weight. So it's all power to weight. There's more power, but there's more weight. So, we might be just seeing some slightly higher speeds. I'm not sure we'd see a lot more foiling. But the key thing now is about what happens at the top of this course. Left-hand side of our screen is New Zealand. Top right-hand corner, USA. They're the main protagonists for our battle to the final here. As we see Denmark, they come round. They've turned right at the top. One turn, and they're close to the finish here. Just leg 4 of 5. There's not a long way to go to the finish here, Todd, and it's quite a crucial manoeuvre. I think the course favours a right turn at this top gate because it will save you a manoeuvre.
They actually have a shorter leg here, so that yellow mark we can see in the middle of the screen, that is going to be their turning mark to the finish. So actually not bad strategy by the Danish team, and Australia will follow that. But USA on the top of our screen, 21 kilometers per hour, and they've got a hull up. So tight decision here with New Zealand.
Really tight. New Zealand will try and turn in front of them. New Zealand will have the right of way when these two boats meet at the top here, but it's often about who's going fastest. Can the Kiwis get the boat up to speed? Good news for Denmark. Good news for Australia. They're actually up and foiling on board the Australian boat, and it's tight here, really, really tight. It's going to come down to a match race manoeuvre between New Zealand and the United States at this final gate.
So while Denmark gets through the last gate before the finish line, all eyes on the Kiwis and the Americans. The Americans on the top right of your screen coming in at 22 kilometers an hour. And now the Kiwis, they've got the speed up now above 20.
Good advantage USA here. They're going to probably be behind, but they turn down. I'm surprised he's turned down early here. That allows New Zealand to shut the door on them. I thought he might have held wide and looked to roll the next manoeuvre ahead. United States, I think, have trapped themselves here. They're faster, but they've put themselves on the outside. Could be an early manoeuvre for the Kiwis. I think that's a mistake by the USA. He had the speed and he's just allowed the door to be shut by the Kiwis.
Denmark gets the win as they cross the finish line. Australia will finish in second, but all eyes on New Zealand and the USA, 4th and 5th. Whoever wins the battle between those two boats will be moving on to the event final.
Oh, the USA jibe right, Kiwis jibe right in front of the British. That could be a mistake by New Zealand here. They've trapped themselves. Big error by the Kiwis, massive error. Advantage USA. Oh, the Kiwis, that was an unforced error. They had United States locked outside of them there. 2 mistakes by 2 of the most experienced skippers in the fleet, but the battle's back on. Penalty to New Zealand. They're going to have to lose 20 meters here. Oh, what a costly error, but the United States are still on the outside. There's plenty of this to play.
GBL's already ahead of us, Craig.
Oh, I can't believe what we've just seen here.
So New Zealand's going to have to get around that gate that you see Canada at right now. Meanwhile, the Americans are coming in and their speed is building. Actually, now it's dropping back to 15. Was 17, back to 15. And look at the Kiwis. They're down at 11.
They've got 2 more manoeuvres to do as well, Todd. That's the problem for New Zealand here. No more manoeuvres for the United States. They're just going around the outside. I can't believe that's happened. Jimmy Spittle, he stayed very calm after that initial mistake at the top gate, and the US have slipped around the outside. Wow.
So the Americans go from making the final to not making the final. Now it looks like they will make the final. If they can get around this gate and follow Canada in and finish in 4th place, 1 position ahead of New Zealand, that final spot in the event final will be theirs.
It's a straight shot to the finish from here, Todd. So Denmark have finished, Australia have finished, Canada, good final result for the Canadians with a 3rd place finish. But wow.
Oh, that worked out well.
Paul Campbell-James getting a little assist. They may be buying dinner for Great Britain.
Yeah, didn't know it was a comedy afternoon there. CJ's called that right. Wow, tight here. France have got to give room for Great Britain. And it's really close. Big tight moment. He's got right to be in there on board Great Britain. And Ainsley's played spoiler for the Kiwis here. That could be massive in the season overall. Of course, for Ainsley, he is there racing the whole way to San Francisco, remember, in season 4. But yeah, big moment there by New Zealand. Got themselves trapped on the British. And all of a sudden, it's just gone inside out.
I think we were never going to be able to drive ourselves. I wonder if they thought we were going to roll us before.
So how do you like this? The Americans go from in it to out, and they are back in again. 2 events in a row, and the Americans just barely slide into the event final.
Danish setting for the pot for the first, like what their rudders are on for that pot.
So what we're hearing there, we're hearing the USA team calling their coach ashore, saying, can you check what those Danish settings are? Because they want to know how to get that hull up and foiling as soon as possible for this final.
That's some pretty sensible decision making there as we see New Zealand. Oh, there's a bit of afters going on between New Zealand and Great Britain. Not in your race, but you're in your season.
Exactly, and I know that Great Britain, they're not going to make this final, but the Kiwis, they're a huge risk to this final. We know that they're fast. They've missed out on the last event, so every point counts, and that's what we're seeing. Doesn't matter if you're not in the race. If you can take a penalty and ruin someone's day, you would.
Yeah.
Or Ben Ainsley would, that's for sure.
And we talked about that, Lisa, that everyone getting desperate and who would love to, hey, I'm not going to make it, but I can ruin my enemy's day. And not saying they're enemies, but welcome back to the league, Pete Burley.
I think it was an interesting move. They jibed a bit early, in my opinion. Not sure why they did that. But, I mean, obviously it was a mistake in hindsight, and we've got the beauty of looking at it from up here. But you know, it was a tough call. Is it racing rust?
We heard Paul Campbell-James say, I was surprised they went. We couldn't jibe. We were on the outside. So I just think, you know, I feel it all got very rushed. There was a couple of odd decisions by both teams, but that's irrelevant now.
Along the seawall, the Spanish get a cheer from their fans, and it's hard to believe they went from race number 1 winning to race number 5 finishing in last place. So the Spanish will not make the event final, nor will the Swiss. It is as tight as it can get down to the final spot. Only the top 3 teams on point make it into the final.
They're well lined up. Oh, racing. That means the boats are feeling late. USA, Jimmy Spittle, mistake outside the boundary. He's going to have to start behind the fleet. It doesn't look like that's going to be a problem right now. I think they're all late. That's great news for Rockwool Denmark. The favoured end of the line is signified by our blue position triangle down there. That's the pole position mark, and Denmark, look at them heading up to it. It's 10 seconds to go. Rockwool Denmark winded up. They're some 50 metres out ahead. 5 seconds to go. How's your timing, Nikolai Hested, as he comes in? Watch for the line to turn wide. Clear start. Big mistake by Australia. Big mistake by USA, and Rockwool Denmark, they're going to be in first position at Mark 1.
And the Dane magic continues in the event final. Look at that start, the biggest they've seen all weekend long as they approach mark number 1 in the event final. It is Denmark, Australia, the USA, and the Danes have been spotted a huge lead right off the gate.
First Italian down now. It's time to keep it simple. What's the heart rate like on board that Danish boat? First time they've led one of these finals for a while. It was season 3 back in Plymouth where they last led, but now they've got a chance to keep it simple. It's lighter winds in under that Cadiz shoreline. We can see the speed dropping off for Rockwool Denmark. What are the boats behind going to choose to do? It's about minimising manoeuvres, I think, right now. Australia stay following. Denmark are slow though. They're off the foils. USA first to turn. Could stay foiling on board the US boat. Can they keep it up in the air? It's close, really close. Jimmy Spittle on the handles there. He's done a fantastic job of staying foiling. Expect a lead change. It's got really light under the Cadiz shoreline.
coming down, please. Good angle there, hold that.
USA, their wing has lit up green, which means they can pop and foil. 34, they should be foiling, no problem here. The problem with Denmark and Australia is they're fighting each other, and as soon as you get in a fight with another boat, you're in trouble.
You just want to get in a fight with Tom Slingsby as well.
Well, and you could see, I think perhaps one of the advantages of being the boat behind is when a boat's ahead sail into less wind, you can see that and you can manoeuvre away. So it was possibly an obvious decision for the US, a less obvious decision for Rockwell, but Jimmy Spithill, great decision making, saw Denmark get slow, saw them get into less wind and thought, I'm not going there. First to turn, stayed in more wind, and look at this, nearly a 200-meter gain.
So if the Danes throwing away a beautiful start and the Americans pick up the golden ticket, prime opportunity for USA SailGP to take control of this race and possibly get their first event win final of the year.
We're on board here. It's going to be interesting here, though, because it was that Cadiz shoreline where the US are sailing to now that the Danes found less wind. So US are going back there. It's interesting how far they push in. Very light winds on board the Danes and the Australians at the moment.
I think what happens is when we see a split here, obviously USA have quite a nice lead, but if you do split from the other boats in this light wind, it's really hard to get back to the other side, so you're sort of committed. We saw USA love this side last time, that's what got them back into the race and essentially into the final.
So on this course, Stevie, can the Americans go as far as they dare go close to that shoreline where there's less breeze and then one shot straight to the next gate?
I think they're going to have to do two from here, but we can see the wind has rotated quite a long way round to the bottom right-hand corner of our screen. So at the moment, the Americans are sailing an angle nearly parallel to the shoreline, which means they're progressing up the course really well. What they can see that we can't is the wind on the water ahead of them. We can't see that. Now, you'd assume that if they're continuing that way, that's because they can see wind there. They're going to have to do a few manoeuvres. Here we go. They're setting up to manoeuvre now, and it's perfectly timed because Denmark are turning left here. They're going to have to be careful of the Australians. The Australians would be entitled to dive inside if it gets tight. Could really play into the US hands, as Lisa says. When these two boats are fighting, it just gets worse and worse. I think Denmark will be round ahead, but they're a long way behind. Look at that, top left-hand side, 350 metres ahead. Oh, can't help but feel for the Danish.
Well, we said that Denmark would want it most, Australia would want it most, but you know, USA, they've had a pretty tough year, so I'm sure they really would love this win. And they're 24 kilometers per hour. If they hit that 28, they might be up and falling. They could just be away from there.
The Americans without the services of Hans Hankin, who was injured, and we wish him the very best in his recovery. And right now, they are going to give him a nice present to help with that recovery because the Americans have a monster lead. Now, Denmark and Australia have both gone around that gate too, and we'll see if they get any kind of pressure to try to track down the Americans.
And if we look at the numbers down the bottom of our screen, foiling percentage 46 compared to Denmark and Australia at 22 and 23. So that is essentially what has got them out in front by hundreds of metres.
See that US boat, he's trying to squeeze the boat as close to the wind as possible. He's trying to point it as close to the next gate as he can. Look at that, they're going slowly, but they're going straight where they want to go. And if they can just make it round this gate 3, then they're going to be in really good shape.
Such a tight margin here, Stevie, as they go to gate number 3. Jimmy is going to try to get as close as he can to that buoy on the right-hand side, and then he will turn and go downwind, and he should get some more pressure. Lisa, have they learned their lesson from not going close to the shore now? Will they stay farther offshore, and will they be able to foil?
I think they'll stay further offshore, and what they will do is, because they have such a good lead, as soon as the next boat makes it to the mark, they'll calculate where they are on the course and whether they need to cover, essentially. But what I think we'll see here is we'll see one dive and straight to the gate, and minimising maneuvers in these conditions is absolutely.
Well, how much money are we giving to Philippe Presti back on shore? Paul Campbell-James said, what are the Danish up to? And it seems like that computer up in the Oracle Cloud, they did have the numbers, because it's a huge improvement by this US boat. As we can see, heading upwind, Australia are foiling. They're up and going, but it could be a bit too little too late in terms of the race for the final. But points matter for the season, and the Australians will want to be ahead of Denmark, that's for sure.
Oh, this has got to be painful as the Australians and the Danes are still heading upwind. The Americans foiling, going downwind as their lead continues to grow with the speed that they're carrying, Stevie. This is a thing of beauty if you're a fan of Team USA. They needed a small break. They started the race off with a penalty at the back of the field, and then as the Australians and the Danes got together and did battle, the Americans shot past.
They did, and here we go. Australia just parked the boat straight in front of Denmark. Can the Danes stay clear? They're going to be sailing in turbulent wind from the Australian wing. but they're up on foiling, which gives them a few more options. They're nearly 700 metres behind the lead, but the battle for second will be real. Tom Slingsby does not like to lose any battles, and he now is not on the foil, but Denmark must keep clear. They've got to be careful here. The Australians can turn them up towards the wind as much as they want. Expect an aggressive move from Tom Slingsby. Turns it up hard. Look out here. Rockwool, Denmark. There's going to be a potential incident. That was so tight.
Get the hell out here, Dad. We get a proper attack.
Slingsby, that was aggressive. Really, really aggressive. Trying to just push the Danes up into the air.
And look at this, the Americans at gate 4, they are already heading back upwind. Not a lapping situation, but Jimmy Spithill now can take chances out on the course leads. He's going to go closer to the shore, possibly seeing some pressure out there.
I think we have seen the day change quite a lot. As we said, the wind has rotated around. It's more pressure than we saw, more wind than the previous race, and it seemed to suit the USA team.
As the Americans continue to sail away, let's go down on the water. Jenny Tulloch, you've got the best seat in the house. I know you saw this coming.
I don't think anyone saw this coming with Team USA out in the back with the penalty off the start, but maybe Ben Ainsley saw it yesterday when he said he had horrible starts and he almost wished instead of being in the pack, he was just out in the back where he could be clear and make his own decisions, and that's ultimately what happened for Jimmy Spithill and Paul Campbell-James, just being able to jive at that first mark and run away with it. But fun to see that little match race scenario just then with Rockwool, Denmark's SailGP team in Australia trying to be aggressive, but Nikolai, you know, he's also world match racing champion, so he could just pick enough distance to stay high enough to foil over the top of them to avoid Tommy and not get the penalty. And you know, it's hard to stay ahead at the moment, but it looks like they're still staying ahead. They're still foiling, at least on this downwind.
And you talk about lonely, out in the middle of the Atlantic, almost all by themselves is Team USA. The Americans going to mark number 5. They'll make that turn on that gate, and there's the finish line just up against the wall, and it'll be celebrations for the Stars and Stripes as Jimmy Spithill and company, 4-person crew, Stevie, they get it done. They took the chance with Jimmy Spithill driving and flying the boat.
They're doing a great job. They've made the choice, tactical chase. They can see the power going in on the handles there. Erica Reinecke and Mac Agnese really putting down the horsepower. That means you can trim the wing a lot more. You can get the maximum out of the boat. And look, they're pretty happy on board there. They were so close in Taranto, Todd, but right now it's looking pretty good.
They are the new fearsome foursome of the Atlantic Ocean. It's Jimmy Spithill and the USA SailGP team. They come to Spain and they claim the victory.
Bosh! Perfect. What a landing in front of the fans, and what a race they put together there.
From a penalty in the start box to victory by a massive distance. Look at this. That's how far back second and third is, with Denmark just getting around that gate. And the Americans are going to have plenty of time to celebrate before the other members of the final come across the line. Lisa, that was a dominant performance just when you thought it was all Rockwool, the darlings of Cádiz, and they get tangled up with Australia, and it's game on.
Well, in the end, you only need to win one race, and the USA team did that. If we take you back to Cádiz last year, they just missed out. It was a photo finish with France, so a little bit of a revenge there, and you know, fantastic to see. I think it's also these 3-boat finals. You've got to stay out of trouble, and when you get hooked in these battles, it just lets the other boat sail away. But it's exciting for us to watch different battles throughout the fleet. I think, and overall season points, we know every point counts. We saw the final last year. You know, 1 point decides who's in that top 3. So they will fight all the way to the end here, Australia and Denmark.
Turning on board the Australian boat there, Nina Curtis on the grinder. She's got to run across and get ready to pull that big wing back in. Denmark straight in front, aggressive slam dunk maneuver there from the Danish Rockwool team, but it's too little too late. Second place is better than third, so they'll try and make the most of that, but after such a perfect start, heartbreak for them. Clinical from the USA though. They saw the other boat sailing into less wind. They reacted quickly, they reacted correctly, and that's what it's all about. Teacup, we say in England, thinking correctly under pressure, and that is exactly what Jimmy Spithill did.
So they are fighting for positions on the podium, and it looks like Denmark will have the speed as they are up and fooling now, as the green on top of that mast shows they are up and fooling. And Australia, as much as Tom Slimby wanted to get the victory, he will not get it. It'll be another third for them. So on the season, they go second, third, second, second, third. Have yet to taste the champagne out on the boat in the celebration as Rockwell comes through, and they will finish in second place, still in hunt of their first victory. Remember, they finished second in Los Angeles, so a second in Los Angeles and a second in Spain for the Danes. A great showing, consistent sailing across the board, but they finished behind the Americans.
You don't have to win San Fran.
That is true. Denmark, you just have to win San Fran for the big payoff and a big wave to the fans that turned out here. Huge crowds on the seawall. Australia will have to look now to Dubai in the Middle East as we say goodbye to Europe. But the Aussies still out in front in the overall Season 4 standings. They are consistent, Lisa, and they do finish in third.
I think they'll be disappointed with third. I think they've really been gunning for a win, and with this team, they are mostly mad at themselves when they make mistakes. And I think that battle with Denmark, that they were in a controlling position. If they stayed on the foils, they could have got that.
Yep.
So I think they'll be disappointed with that mistake.
What a show as the win comes in just in time, and in the event final, it's the USA that gets the win, followed by Denmark and Australia.